Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess, the channel of chess. And in this video, we'll try once again our luck with Puzzle Rush. How many puzzles can we get correct before we have three puzzles wrong? Let me share the screen with you to see what's happening. This is chess.com, the Puzzle Rush page. You see, here's a Puzzle Rush. How does it work? If you have not seen the previous videos, it works as follows. Chess.com is going to give us one puzzle after another, and if you get it right, we continue. If you get it wrong, the third puzzle we get wrong, it's over. And the question is, how many puzzles can we have correct before we have three puzzles wrong? Can we break a record of 50? We did it a few puzzles ago. You see here 59, this is not the correct number. Once by there was an error in the puzzles and they gave us the same puzzle again and again, and that's how I was able to make 59, but that's not the real record. The record under regular conditions is 50 that we had a few puzzles ago, and let's see if we can pass it. We're using survival mode, so we can have enough time to discuss with you what is happening. I'm going to share with you my thoughts, but I would like to invite you, once you see a new puzzle, please pause and try to see if you can do it on your own. And in the comments, I'd like to ask you to share with us your experience. Have you done it on your own? What was your best record? Were you able to do the puzzles as we're doing them or not? Which ones are the easy? Which ones are the tough ones? And as usual, what we expect is the first two puzzles to be very simple, made in one or two moves or something very obvious. But as we go on, they'll become tougher and tougher. And let's start again. I'm hitting the play button and on we go. And the first puzzle is here. Freeze, which means pause and see if you can do it on your own. And the best way you can go ahead with that is if you pause in every puzzle, because that is the best way to train yourselves, and hopefully if you see this in your real games, you'll be able to do them. First puzzle seems to be quite simple. You see the arrow, queen will go to f8, checkmate. Second one. Again, this is a one move checkmate. I think this should be a checkmate. Third one. This is not checkmate in one. I think it is in two. And what is happening here is a discover check with a pawn. Yes, I think that if we go here, no matter where the king goes, then pawn promotes and it's a checkmate. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Next one. Got three correct. And I think this is another one move checkmate thanks to the back rank. Next one. This is back rank, but in two moves, because as rook goes to d1, white needs to take with his own rook, and now it is our turn to checkmate. Next one, once again, one move checkmate, queen from b1 will take bishop on c1. And let's see here what is happening. Again, one move checkmate. So what I'd like to ask you to do is, in these easy ones, look at the checks and see which one is a mate. And I think it is this one. Yes. Next one. Once again, one move checkmate, queen goes to f2. Let's see here what's happening. Definitely there is no one move checkmate. I think it is three moves. Let's see. I think first move. Oh no, it is one. No, there's no pin. So one move, pawn takes back, and then queen goes here to check. Bishop comes here, and queen will go here for the checkmate. Too many orange lines, but let's see how it goes. Yes. This one is one move checkmate, the two rooks on this second rank. Two black rooks on the second rank. Let's continue. This looks also like one move checkmate. Queen supported by the rook will go to d7 and deliver the checkmate. And let's see if we can finish the first row 12 out of 12 flawlessly. It looks like a two-move checkmate. If bishop goes to g4, pawn may stop it, but then bishop will continue for checkmate. Because all the other squares around the king are controlled by black pieces, the two bishops and the rook. Yes, so we finished 12 out of 12, the first horizontal line, all of them correct. But these were the easy ones. Now they start becoming tougher and tougher. Let's see what's happening here. The only check, I mean, there are some, of course, ridiculous checks. I'm not saying about queen going f1 or f2. The only one that makes sense is if knight goes to e2 check, king will go to the h1 or h2, and then queen will go to h8 and mate. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Queen goes to h8. Then white queen might postpone it one move. Yes, by going to h6, but now it's mate. This looks like one move checkmate with a battery. Queen from g3 goes to g7, supported by the bishop on c3. Yes. This is three move checkmate background story. Queen will go to e2, king goes to g1, queen goes to e1 check, and then after rook takes, rook will go from e8 to e1. Let's see if this is the answer. I always say let's see, because no matter how obvious it is, we may get caught by surprises. And in the real game, we better double check this again and again. Let's see what's happening here. Material is the same. Black can easily take the rook on h1, but then their own rook is threatened on c4. What will happen if I think first move is queen goes to h1 to win the white rook. I think that after exchanges of whatever needs to be exchanged, we just save our rook on c4. Yes. Here, let's see what's happening. I think it's a one-move checkmate. If queen goes from b4 to b5, it's a check, and where can the black king go? I cannot see anywhere. Yes. Let's see here what's happening. Here, white can only win if they promote the pawn that currently is on f5. The advantage of white is that the king is near the three pawns, the two black and the one white, while the black is a little bit further off. And I think that if the king takes here, then all they can do is just push the f5 pawn until the end. And we don't think black can stop it. Let's see. Now we have to be careful because black is very near promoting. Because if black promotes, we have a draw. White can white check. They can check from a8, but then they cannot play quiet move, meaning if queen goes to h8, the pawn is going to promote in two moves. If you don't check, pawn goes to h2. So the only way to stop or to postpone is if queen goes to a8. Then depending on black's reaction, yes, if then queen goes to h1, if possible. Yes, that's it. They don't want the follow-up. We got it correct. Here, what's happening? Materially, black is down an exchange and a pawn, if I'm correct. But what black should do is, look at that. And of course, try to solve it on your own if possible. If rook goes to f2 check, threatens the black rook, and rook takes back, then queen can go to e3 check, and then the rook is lost. And not only that, the white king is in a difficult situation and don't think how they can avoid the mate. So black needs temporarily to sacrifice the rook. Yep, yes, and this is mate. If the king would go to d1, it's mate with the knight taking here, but now we don't even need that. It's much easier with the so-called kiss of death. Let's see what's happening here. Black has made a mistake. This seems to be from the opening. You see that black has developed only a knight and a bishop. So white has developed only knight and bishop. Black has debated absolutely nothing. He was just moving the pawns. And that's what happens if in the opening all you do is move your pawns. They weaken the diagonal that goes from h5 to e8, this diagonal. So white, I think, is going to check from here. What can black do? The only thing it can do is put the king on e7, and then the queen will go to f7 and should be mate. Let's see if this is the case. Yes, it didn't even ask for the second move. This is mate in one move because the white king is surrounded by its own queen and pawn, so queen needs to go from f6 to f3 to h5, and I think this is mate. Let's give a look. Yes. Next one. If queen goes to f3 to check, white's only move is rook goes to g2 and then queen takes on g2 mate. Let's try. Yes, didn't ask for the second move. What's happening here? This looks like a two-move mate because you have battery bishop b8, queen c7. If queen goes to g3 check, king goes to h1 and queen goes to h2 mate. Let's see if that is the case. Yes. 23. Let's see if we can finish the second row flawlessly with 24 out of 24. This looks like a two-move mate because the queen is on the second rank, blocks the white king on the first rank, and black also has a wonderful rook. Although black has a bishop less in material, but they have a few extra pawns. If the rook goes to h1, the only answer is bishop goes to c1, and then rook takes the bishop. Yes. So we finished 24 out of 24. The first two rows from 192, the first one, this is the strength of the puzzle until 13, 15, the 24th, we are flawless. But can we continue like that? The puzzles were going to become tougher and tougher. Here, what do we have? We have a black king on b8 with white pawn on b6. So if white could place a queen or a rook on the 8th rank, it's mate. But is this possible? Yes, there is a way, but white needs to sacrifice the queen. Queen will go to d5, takes the rook, then if black takes the queen, then the rook goes to f8, and it's almost a mate, meaning queen can go to e8, rook to d8, but after that it's mate. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes, and now it's mate. This is a mating pattern that one needs to recognize. Otherwise, why would White sacrificed a queen. Now, here what's happening is that the white king is in a tough situation because they're blocked on the g file. The f file is controlled by the black rook on f2. And how about the h? Let's see, I think there is an answer. If the pawn goes from f6 to f5, king goes to h3, pawn will go to g4 check, king goes to h4, and then rook will checkmate. Let's see if this is the answer, or if we have any nasty surprises. Yes, yes, and yes. What do we have here? I don't see, there is one check for black. If queen from e7 goes to c5, I don't know if it's the answer because I can't see a follow-up. Ah, yes, the follow-up, we don't checkmate, but we're going to win the bishop on c4. But is this enough? If combination wins some material, we must make sure that we are ahead of material after that. In the beginning, both sides have queen, both sides have two rooks and light pieces. Both sides have two bishops and a knight. Pawns, 6 for each side. So we start with equal material. So if black can win a piece, they are ahead, and this would be the answer. I cannot see anything better than that. So queen will go to c5 check. And now there's a problem. If bishop takes bishop, bishop takes queen. If we take queen, it's very complicated. A much easier thing than that, and I hope this is correct, is queen takes bishop. And now bishop takes queen, and we're a piece ahead. Let's continue. Material black is a piece behind. So winning the bishop on e2 is not going to, should not be the answer. And I cannot even win it because there's a white queen on a6 that is going to stop it. If let's say the queen goes to e2, no, they could win it, but yes, because the bishop on e2 is attacked twice, defended once, but they just get back the piece there behind. But what better thing do they have? That's not going to be an easy, and this should be a tricky one. They can easily take back the bishop. And so what? That is the big question. They may threaten the exchange, but they only threaten. This we need to think a little bit, and of course, I'd like to ask the viewers to also think for yourselves to see what can you do. If rook goes from b4 to b2, it would be so easy. Of course, if the bishop disappears on e2, it's a mate. But if bishop goes, for example, to f3, it's not going to be easy. If queen goes to e3, they no, they don't threaten. If rook goes to a4, they threaten the queen. And so what? The queen has enough squares to escape. Bishop goes to e2. That's what's happening because it threatened. Let me put the arrow first. Both the rook on f1 and the queen on a6. And that should be the answer. Now, at least that was the correct first move. What's happening here? Materially wise, now they equalize, but black can win the exchange. The bishop on e2 take on f1. This one. Of course, they'll take back the bishop, but black is ahead. Anything better than that? Not that I can see. Oh, they check. They have to reply to the check. And how many legal moves they have? King can go to h8 or h7, or queen can go to g6. If they go h8 or h7, they lose the pawn here. And here we have something nice. If queen goes to g6, then white must either exchange queens, and in this case, the rook on f8 will protect the bishop on f1. Or if they move the queen anywhere else, then black has enough time to save their bishop. Yes, got this one right. Here what's happening? Let's see material. They start, each side has queen, two rooks, yes, two bishops and one knight, and pawn 7 versus 7. Material is the same. So if black can win even one piece, that should be great. They attack the bishop on c4, the knight, but we have the problem that the queen protects it. So first of all, I think that black should exchange queens. And if they take with the bishop, then knight takes bishop, we finish. If rook takes it, then pawn has to go to f5, rook has to go back, and then we got the bishop. Let's see if this is the answer. Now, we cannot just take the bishop, the rook is there. So first we're going to win the rook. Yes. Here what's happening? It's very tempting for white to take the pawn on b7. A material, let's say, a queen, two rooks, three light pieces, pawns 8 versus 8. If it's not a mating combination and there's a chance to win material, we must make sure that after we win the material, we are ahead. Because if we're down 2 pieces and we have a combination that gives us 1 piece, so what? We're still losing the game. If queen goes to b7, threaten the rook on a8. How can black save it? I don't see how they can save it. Do they threaten anything worse? At most, the pawn on c3. Of course, if the black queen could magically go to f1, it could be mate or very near mate. But I don't see this thing happening. I think if we take on b7, what can black do? They can place their bishop on c6. We have to be careful about this line. Because then we cannot take the rook. But what if queen goes to c8, check, and at least you win the rook on h8, even if there is no mating combination after that. Let's see if this is the answer. As first move, yes. As second move, now we take the rook. And now we have to be very careful because the rook on f8 attacks the queen on a8. I mean, even if, what can they do? If we take the rook, we got two rooks in the pawn for the queen. It's quite a good deal, but not the best. What else can white do? Where can the queen be saved? It can go to b7, the only safe square. a7 is attacked by the knight, but is there a follow-up for black? Not that I can see. Queen goes to b7. Yes, we got 30 correct. It become tougher and tougher. It's not one move checkmate any longer. Here what's happening is both sides start with queen and two rooks, pawns. Let me count. 5 for black and 6 for white. Just one pawn difference. So that should not be the key. But if pawn goes to h3, you see that if black would play a second move in a row, queen would go to g2 its mate. But white has a move to reply. First of all, they cannot check. What would I do if I was white? Pawn goes to h3, pawn goes to f3. I can't see how else they can stop it. And then queen goes to e3 check. The king goes to h1. I can't see any other legal move. And queen from e3 goes to e4 back. No, there's a pawn there. Queen can go to e2, threaten mate, and I don't see how white could stop it. They can postpone with the rooks, but that's it. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Check from e3. And now I think the third move is queen goes to e2, threatening g2. Black can postpone to one move with the rook on f2, but that's it. And they can win the queen. Yes, another way to postpone, but they win a whole queen, and mate will follow, but even if it doesn't follow, an extra queen wins a lot. Here, queen c1, this is the 30 seconds. That puzzles become tougher and tougher. Black cannot mate at h2 so long as queen is on the second rank. That's why we cannot put a queen, for example, to a6 to prepare anything, or to b5, because black will mate immediately. What would happen if the white rook went to g1? Let's see this possibility. Fortunately, from now on the puzzle, we have to look into possibilities. We cannot just say, ha, I saw it, one move made. Where can the black queen go? Not too many squares. h3, h4 are the only ones. But then, so what? One could ask, what is the follow-up? We don't know if the pawn, how did the pawn land on f5? Because if immediately before it went f7 to f5, then we have a check with en passant. They just show us, or maybe they showed us and I missed it. But let's assume we have the en passant, so what? Oh, here we are. The queen on a g3 is safe only because of the rook on h5. But if we first take the rook and the pawn takes a queen, then we win the queen and we are a rook ahead. Let me show it. This. And now the queen is not protected by any pin and we win it. Let's do it. Yes, so the black realizes it and removes the queen, is safe. Now the white queen is in danger, but what can we do? How can we save it? There are many ways, but I think the best one is with a check on h6. We did it. Now, do we have any follow-up? Because we want to continue the attack. Now, we were a rook behind, so now we just equalize the material. That should not be the answer. If queen goes to h7, where can the black king go? If they go to e6, we take the pawn, and we have a strong attack. If they go to 8th rank, queen can deliver a check from there. h7, yes. What can queen do? Oh, I wouldn't want the queen just to win a pawn, because the black queen goes to f3, is checking, and they are in the strong attack. They can win the d4 pawn, and things are not so simple. So even if we place the Oh, no, the queen will take if we push the pawn to e6 just for mate on f7. So check. There are two ways to do check, either from h6, but h6 is just a repetition, or from h8, then cross our fingers. Okay, good. Fortunately, they didn't ask us to continue the puzzle, so we got it right. Here, the black has two rooks on the second rank, very near mate. And with the knight, if there was no knight on e4, maybe black could at most have a repetition, which would be good for them because there's a white pawn on e7 ready to promote. But I think with the help of the knight, we have more than that. Let's see. Continue. And it should be mate. They didn't let us go through that. 33 correct. Almost two-thirds of the record of 50. Let's see what can we do here. Here, black has a strong attack, has queen and two rooks on the c file. If they could check on c1 safely, it would be wonderful, but this is not going to happen. But if rook goes from c2 to b2 check, and king takes it, queen can check from c2 check. Of course, if black goes to a1, it's mate. If black goes to a3, what's happening? If queen goes to a2, king will take the knight. Is there a follow-up after that? Pawn goes to a5, check. King goes to yes, I think eventually it's going to be what's called lateral mate, meaning queen will control the b file and rook will mate from the a file once the king is forced to take the a pawn from a7 went to a5. Let's see if this is the case. I can't see anything else. Materially, queen to rook's knight, yes. A 5, 4. Oh, okay. White has one extra pawn, doesn't mean too much. In fact, they have two pairs of double pawns. I think this is the first move. Make sure this is the second. Wait a minute. Queen can check either from c3 or from c2. If they check from c3, king goes to a3, knight f3. I don't see follow-up. But it's going to be one of the two. Queen goes either c3 or c2. If they go to c2, we said will happen. King goes to a3, queen a2, king takes a knight on b4, pawn goes to a5, king goes to b4, queen takes, king takes, and rook mates. If queen goes to c3, imagine if there's a faster way and they consider it wrong. King goes to a2. Then knight can check from c2 and king can go back. So I think it is queen goes to c2. Yes, yes, yes. Queen takes here, yes, check. And then rook would go to a8. So we got it right. Now let's see here what's happening. If we got 34, we passed the two-thirds mark of our records. Let's see how well we can do. And zero errors. But don't forget, when we did the 50, we had 50 completely correct from 1 until 50, and then 3 wrong, 3 errors in a row. But let's see this time what we'll do. Queen can check from g8, but then rook can go to g6. And what follow-up is there? Queen can go to e8 check. But what if queen checks from f5? Because then black has only one legal answer. Pawn goes to g6. And then queen goes to d7, and that should be mate. Mating two moves. Let's see if this is the case. Now we have to be careful. Yes. No, it's not the rook that will check. It's the queen that has to go to d7, and this would be mate. Yes. Here, what's happening? In a real game, you see that both sides have bishops and 4 pawns, bishop same color. So it is a very tricky situation. Small details could decide the outcome. In a real game, one would have to think very carefully because black has the choice to exchange bishops, but they don't have to. They can place a bishop back on d7 or e8. Now, if they do so, the bishop is very miserable. But their bishop has a big advantage. It is the same, no, not really, with two of the pawns. But no, the pawns, each side has two on light squares and two on dark squares. Ideally, if this is the case, you would like to have your pawns on dark colors and your bishop, uh, if you have a light color bishop. But here, I don't see how black can make any progress without exchanging bishops. In a real game, you might, if the calculations turn out to be wrong, you might have to avoid and just get away with a draw. Because once you exchange bishops, there's no way back. What would happen if we exchange bishops? Because if black takes, white will take back. Then the king would go to, which king can take the most pawns? If the king goes here, hoping to get this pawn here. The black king is going to go here. I think that the black king going from the side is going little by little to push the white king towards the left, as you see here, or the white, actually the right, as you see from white's perspective, meaning towards the king side. And eventually will win the pawn on c4. In a real game, this may or may not work, but it seems that black cannot lose after exchanging the bishops. While if they place their bishop back on d7 or e8, the odds are against them. Then they cannot win. Wrong. We got it wrong. The first error we have. After 35 correct in the first 3 rows, 35 out of 36. We're going to see later what we did wrong. We're going to see them in the end. Let's hope we don't have more wrongs. Now, here bishops stare at each other. Black needs to do something, otherwise they'll lose the bishop on b7. If they take on e4, they are going to lose the queen will take back. But is there a follow-up? It's a tricky one. If rook goes from a8 to e8, assuming got it right, they threaten the bishop here. They attack it twice, it's defended once. So if bishop here takes the white one, then rook is going to go from e8 to e1 check, and it's mate because of a bishop here, d6 controlling the h2 square, and the bishop on c1 does not allow the white rook to interfere. But what else can black do? How else can they save their bishop? They can push the pawn on f3. Meaning, rook goes here, pawn goes here. Don't see how else they can save. If they move their bishop anywhere, for example, where could they move it? So what they could do is after rook goes to e8, it's a very promising move. Bishop can go to d3. So when the check comes from e8 to e1 check, they can place the bishop back on f1. Or they can push the pawn f3. Of course, they weaken themselves, but better weaken themselves than have a mate. What else can they do? What if they move their rook to f8 and threaten check on f2? The answer is, and so what? King goes to, but they could be a block. with pawn to f3. Also, there could be bishop going to e3. So I think it's more promising to place a rook on e8, and let's see if this is the answer. Nope. Second wrong. So after 35 correct, we have two wrongs, and let's hope no more wrongs. Here, ooh, black is facing a check. They cannot just check themselves on f2. So how many legal moves do they have to reply the check? They can place their rook on d7, but then white can take it easily with multiple ways. The rook on d1 not only do it, but also do it with a check. And if knight takes, queen takes knight. Here you see that material-wise, white has an extra piece. Queen, two rooks both sides, one knight for black, knight and bishop for white, and pawns 4 versus 4. So black needs to do something. What else can they do? If king goes to f8, what is... it's not going to be easy for white for follow-up, because if they take the rook, then there are threats, then there are clear threats, and checks I only see from the knights, and they can be stopped. So I'm going to place the king on f8 and cross our fingers, make sure we get it right. I don't want to end it here. Yes, we got it correct. How do we continue now? If queen goes to f2 check, king goes to g1. We can win the bishop. But we cannot just take the rook, because bishop takes back and queen has no way to check. I mean, even though the rook is here, the bishop will be here to win the queen. So I think that we have to go to f2. Yes. Here's the tricky thing. If rook goes to g2, clearly bishop has to stay back. Queen cannot check from here. How many checks does black have? Only two. Either rook goes to g2 or to f1. Let's see what will happen in this case. f1, black has at least two ways to take it, and I cannot see follow-up in either of them. If they go to g2, then black can only take with the bishop on f3. And then what? Or maybe the answer is they just win the bishop on f3, but black is dangerous attacks. They can bring their rook on d7. So either they win the bishop on f3 or check on g2. What would happen if there is a mate on g2? Of course, we go for that. Otherwise, we win. We just get the bishop, but material will be the same. The problem is that queen would love to check from d4 diagonally, but there's a rook on e1. Can the knight do anything? On f6, it can threaten the queen, but that's all it can do. I think that the best answer is rook takes on f3. Yes, we got it right. So we got at least 36 correct. Here, what is happening is this wonderful knight on d5 would like to go to f6 and win material, but currently it can't because there's a queen on d8. Material, how do they start? The two sides, queen, two rooks, and one light piece, pawns 5 versus 5, same material. But if queen takes the rook on e8, queen has to take back. Otherwise, black loses entire rook, and then knight goes to f6, and we have a fork. They may not win the entire rook, but at least they'll win the exchange. Knight f6 check. Anything better than just winning the fork. I can't see anything else. There's no mate, so we get it, and we got 37 correct. Good. Here, uh, clearly white has much more material, has queen and rook versus has black is no queen. So if you count the points 9, 14, 17, 21 for white, 5, 11, 14, 17 for black, 4 points difference. So black cannot continue as usual. But if the knight on f2 takes on h3, and the pawn takes, then what happens? Bishop goes, there is a bishop on b7 controls a lot of squares. Then bishop from d6 takes on h2, and king can only go to f1, and then bishop goes to g2. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes, yes. And now bishop goes to g2, and it should be made. Good. Let's see the next one. What's happening here? Knight can check from g4, and so what? Queen can take on h3, sacrifice queen for a knight, and so what after that? Rook can go to g2, check, and then after king takes it, queen goes to g4, check. That's not going to be an easy one. Can we threaten any of black's pieces? Look, if a knight checks on h4, if king goes to g1 or g2, we have a discover check. Although I can't see what you can win out of that, but at least it's discover. But if king goes to h1, what if we do what's called a silent move? What if queen goes to g4? Then we threaten mate in multiple ways. In g2, immediately, if black tries something else, we can take the knight. I think what else can black do? So what else white can do? Yes, if queen goes to g1, then what can queen do? Queen is in a tough situation because if queen is removed, then the rook on g8 is lost. So it cannot just be a nice quiet move. If rook, if knight checks from g4, then king goes to h1, and the knight does not allow. What if queen goes to g7? Anything better? If pawn goes to f3 to threaten with rook checks on g2 and then doesn't seem to be anything nice. Queen can go to g7 instead of g4. So if rook goes to g1, queen can go to f7 or h7. We don't lose the rook, but we cannot have a nice attack. I think we must start with a check. I'll place my knight on g4. I'm not sure at all if this is the answer. Yes, it's correct. So at least we got, even though by accident, the first move correct. What is the next move? The only check we have if knight goes to f2, but then it can be taken by the knight, not by the queen, because then we take the knight on h3. If knight goes to e3, and if pawn takes it, then queen to h3 is almost made, meaning queen can go to h2, but then queen goes to f3. But what else can we do? Queen could go to, yes, queen goes to h4, threatens the knight on h3. And how can black save it? If they push the pawn from d3 to d4, that's the only way. Wait a minute. Queen cannot go to h4. What am I saying? No. If knight goes to e3 and we threaten the knight on h3, because this goes for mate. How can black defend? I can't see how. Where can knight go? If it goes to g1, for example, queen can go to g4. I think I would play this exactly. Now we win the queen. Good, we got it correct. They are not easy at all as we go ahead. We had to sweat to do this one. Now, what can we do? If queen goes to d7, the white queen goes to d7, it's a check, and king can only go to b8. What follow-up is there? What we almost make mate, but if queen takes knight, rook takes queen, and rook takes queen, and queen takes rook, so it's not. But if queen goes to c7 check, king can go to, he has to go, because supported by the knight, he has to go to a8, and then queen goes to c8, and it's mate. Let's see if this is the answer. One, two. Yes, we got it. We got 40 correct. 40 out of 42. Let's see how much ahead can we go. Here, what will happen? White has lots of checks. Most of them don't seem to give anything. And we can also even win the rook on h8 material. Queen, rook, bishop for white, queen, two rooks, two pieces for black. So even if the bishop on b7 gets the rook on h8, we're done in material. That cannot be the answer. If a bishop checks from f6, it's lost from the queen on c6. We queen or rook can go to the d file. Ideally, you'd want the rook to go there. That's the first thought. So king cannot escape on the e file. Because if rook goes to d1 check and black does not want to lose the queen, a king has to go to c8. Then queen can go to g4. King goes to b8. And what is the follow-up? The only thing I see for now is rook goes to d1 to start the attack. Yes. Second move, how can we continue? Queen can check from e6, the queen will take it. If queen from checks from g4, king goes to b8. And so what? This second move, it's easy to see, but where does it lead? We can win the rook on h8. Not only that, if we win it, we are very near mate. We have to be careful because black also threatens with mate. Look at that. If white, for example, move the pawn or do something crazy, then irrelevant. I mean, then black would take the queen from c6 to g2 and it's mate. But if white places, that's why the original thought of taking the rook, not only we're still down material, we checkmate it immediately. But if white put the queen on g4, they defend against his mate. So I would suggest this to be the second move. And now what can be the third move? We got the first two right. We can win the rook on h8 all we want, but then also we have potential for attack. We can take the knight on h4 and what if we take the knight on h4? If rook takes it, then our rook will checkmate. And if not, we're very near checkmate. I think if we take the knight on h4, we are threatening with mate. Nope, we got it wrong. So we got 40 correct. Let's see what did we do wrong. Let's start with this 1910. Well, we thought that exchanging the bishop would be the answer. If that's not the answer, what could we be? Maybe king going to a5 and approaching the white pawns. Let's see. We'll try once again. Yes, this is the answer now. Black, okay, here. Bishop goes here, and bishop goes here. Now, yes. Okay, we got it correct the second time. Too late. At least we know the answer. That is why these end games are very, very tricky. Close tab. Let's see the next one. We could send the rook on e8. Could it be if we send it to f8 instead? Let's see now. Nope. So neither of these. Let's see what is the correct answer. Okay, different combination. After we exchange bishops, rook attacks queen. Okay. And let's see the last one. But we're lucky we had some correct that we never expected. We got this. Let's see again. We got this one correct. We got this one correct. And do we win the bishop? Yes, that would have been the correct one. Instead, we ended up with 40. We didn't make a record, but it's quite a good score. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Later today, I'm going to Syosset, Long Island, to participate in the Chessanity tournament. 3 games, and I'm planning to have the next 3 videos devoted to these games. That's all for now. Thanks everybody for watching. And of course, thanks to all the viewers, subscribers, the likes and the comments. This is grecochess. I'm Harry Lausenisiris. Goodbye.